Hello, Esther Githui-Ewart. It's Monday, October 11th. This is Africa 54.
Years after the fact, the murder trial of former Burkina Faso President Thomas Sankara and 12 others is underway. Kenyan children received the groundbreaking malaria vaccine. And a new report calls the Democratic Republic of Congo's multi-billion-dollar mining deal with China unconscionable.
It's a big day in Burkina Faso as the trial on the assassination of former President Thomas Sankara is finally underway, more than 3 decades after he and 12 others were killed in a 1987 coup. Former President Blaise Compaoré, the main defendant in the trial, who now lives in exile in Ivory Coast, will not be attending. Henry Wilkins reports from Ouagadougou.
Aluna Traoré is the lone survivor of an attack that killed former Burkinabe President Thomas Sankara and 12 others in October 1987. Traoré was Sankara's legal advisor. This is the spot where Sankara, still considered a national hero in Burkina Faso, died. On Monday, his alleged killers will stand trial at the military court in Ouagadougou. As Revisits the site, Traoré remembers the day of the assassination.
Shots were being fired and we were told to get out, get out, get out, get out. The comrade president got up, adjusted the tracksuit he was wearing and told us that he was the one the attackers were looking for. He went out that way, the same door he came in. He came out of the room with his hands up, outside, without a weapon.
Analysts say Sankara was a popular figure who had a big influence on how governments were run in the region.
Came to be known by some people as the Che Guevara, if you like, of West Africa, with a big focus on grassroots issues, so really focusing on the well-being of ordinary people.
14 defendants stand accused of carrying out the assassination or conspiring to, including former top-ranking military officials and politicians. The prime defendant, Sankara's successor as President Blaise Compaoré, will not be in attendance, however. Compaoré was ousted in a coup in 2014 after 27 years of rule and has been in exile in Ivory Coast ever since. His lawyers denounced the trial as political. A previous trial for the Sankara assassination was held under Compaoré's rule, but the judgment was also dismissed as politicised and invalid by the transitional government after Compaoré was ousted. One of the lawyers for the Sankara family expects the trial to last 4 months and says they have amassed irrefutable evidence against the defendants.
Il y a beaucoup de témoins qui ont été entendus, parmi les militaires, les civils, les politiques.
There are many witnesses who are heard among the military, civilians, politicians of the time. For example, the driver who drove the commandos to the execution. He is alive and testifies very clearly on this issue.
Matri Mathieu Somé is representing one of the defendants, Gilbert Diendere.
Nous avons un contexte qui rend difficile le travail des juges.
The trial is being held in a context that makes the work of judges difficult, a context in which there are prejudices. People have already made their judgment, thus jeopardizing the presumption of innocence, the main principle of a fair trial.
Nonetheless, the trial has gripped the country. Like many, Traoré is anxious to see what truth will emerge. Henry Wilkins for VOA News, Ouagadougou, Burkina Faso.
Madagascar produces less than 0.01% of global carbon dioxide emissions, but amid a 4th year of drought in the Grand Sud region, the United Nations is warning of a climate change famine. David Doyle has more.
Some days, Tsimamarek Ali gets by on just sugary water. Amid what the United Nations is calling a climate change famine in southern Madagascar, he's grateful if he gets a handful of rice. But with 6 young children and a wife to support, he often goes without.
In previous years, there was rain, a lot of rain. I grew sweet potatoes and I had a lot of money from selling them. I even got married because I was rich.
But this is Ali's 4th year of drought. Today, more than 1 million people need food aid in the Grand Sud region where he lives. That's 2 out of every 5 residents. And while food insecurity is not uncommon on the continent, in the likes of Ethiopia, South Sudan and Somalia, conflict is the central cause. Madagascar is at peace. Hunger is not being caused by bullets, but erratic rainfall, below average for the past 6 years according to researchers at the University of California in Santa Barbara. Temperatures in southern Africa are rising at double the global rate, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change says. What's more, according to the World Carbon Project, Madagascar produces less than 0.01% of global carbon dioxide emissions. It was a point made by President Andry Rajoelina earlier this month.
Cette partie de l'île du sud de Madagascar, ils sont victimes du changement climatique.
This part of Madagascar is a victim of climate change.
Et au changement climatique. Donc,
except they haven't participated in it.
C'est que les pays qui polluent le plus.
And what we expect today from the superpowers is that the countries that pollute the most must help the countries that pollute less.
À mon avis, pallier.
So that we can, in my opinion, mitigate the impact of climate change and also help the population in this part of the country.
Rajoelina, whose government is giving parcels of land to those fleeing the worst-hit areas, was visiting a new facility from French company Nutriset. It tackles malnutrition with products like Plumpy Nut and aims to produce 600 tons annually of emergency food for children. 500,000 children are expected to become acutely malnourished in southern Madagascar, the UN's Children's Fund says. Over 100,000 severely so. And that, UNICEF says, will cause developmental delays, disease and death.
That was David Doyle of Reuters reporting. The African Union says it has decided to transition its current mission in Somalia to a joint mission between the United Nations and the African Union. In a statement, the Peace and Security Council of the African Union says it endorsed an AU independent assessment team's recommendation on a hybrid mission for Somalia. The planned date for the mission is January 2022. The plan will need approval by the UN Security Council. The Somali government previously rejected the plan and insisted on a supporting role for the AU mission with a gradual transitioning of security responsibilities to Somali forces. A Spanish Coast Guard boat on Sunday transported 36 migrants intercepted in the Atlantic Ocean to the island of Gran Canaria. The migrants, including women and children, were rescued 6 miles off the Canary Islands and transported to port. Spain's Canary Islands are experiencing a surge in seaborne migration that has seen thousands make the dangerous crossing from Africa to the Atlantic archipelago. Data from the Interior Ministry shows that more than 13,000 migrants had arrived by sea to the Canaries archipelago by September 30th, more than double the number in the same period in 2020. Children were inoculated with the world's first approved malaria vaccine in part of Western Kenya, where the disease is prevalent. Zachary Goldman has the details.
Hundreds of children in Kenya's malaria-prone western region were inoculated with doses of the world's first approved malaria vaccine on Thursday. Despite her 2-year-old child's screams, mother Phoebe Wetende didn't hesitate. She said she'd seen firsthand the ravages of the mosquito-borne illness.
In our family, we have had a lot of malaria-related problems. Some members have turned mad and others we've lost. Especially in our home, even after someone has been treated, they still fall ill from malaria after a few months.
On Thursday, her daughter received her 4th and last dose at Yala Sub-County Hospital. The vaccine, called RTSS, or Mosquirix, was developed by British drug maker GlaxoSmithKline and is the product of 30 years of research to fight one of the deadliest scourges on Earth. Malaria killed 386,000 Africans in 2019. This week, the World Health Organization said Mosquirix should be widely given to African children. Since 2019, 2.3 million doses have been administered to infants in Ghana, Kenya, and Malawi in a large-scale pilot program. The vaccine's effectiveness at preventing severe cases of malaria in children is only around 30%, but it is the only approved vaccine. Chris Opati, the clinical officer in Siaya County, Kenya, said the trial is already showing improvements.
We've seen a reduction in the cases of the severe form of malaria, and this can be checked through our reporting systems. The numbers have really gone down.
But it's unclear when the vaccine will be accessible to the many African countries where malaria is endemic, because the cost per dose is not known, and it is not clear how quickly production can be scaled up.
That was Zachary Goldman of Reuters reporting. A new report is calling the Democratic Republic of Congo's $6 billion deal with China on mining resources unconscionable, saying few of the promised benefits have materialized and that may bolster the country's bid to revise the terms of the contract. Clara Frank has more.
In 2008, the Democratic Republic of Congo struck a big deal with Beijing. China's state-owned firms would build hospitals and roads in return for revenues from copper and cobalt mines. 13 years on, critics say few of the promised benefits have materialized. Now a new report by a global anti-corruption body, seen by Reuters, calls the deal unconscionable. It urges Congo to cancel an amendment signed in secret in 2017, which sped up payments to Chinese investors.
We have noticed for some years that people come into our country with empty hands and pretend to be entrepreneurs and leave with billions in their pockets, but we remain poor.
The report may be welcomed by President Felix Tshisekedi. On a recent visit to a mining area, he told residents he was reevaluating relations with Chinese investors. Tshisekedi's move marks a rare pushback by Congo. Now the full report will be published later this month by the Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative, which tracks money flows in oil and mining. It has no legal force, but it could bolster Congo's bid to rejigger the China deal and maybe make Beijing change its approach elsewhere. Jean-Pierre Okenda is an expert on Congolese mining.
I think that this report might make the Chinese government think twice in terms of making deals in countries with weak governance, countries where the administration is not efficient.
Global industry will be watching too. The Democratic Republic of Congo is the world's leading producer of cobalt, now of huge strategic importance as a key component in batteries. Clara Frank, VOA News.
The president of the African Development Bank says Africa is ready for increased U.S. investment. Akinwumi Adesina says before the global coronavirus pandemic, Africa still had the 6th fastest growing economies in the world, adding that the fundamentals remain valid today. His remarks were delivered as he held a series of meetings with senior U.S. government officials and business leaders here in Washington. For more insight, VOA's Peter Clotty spoke with Adesina via Skype.
I think first and foremost is to remember that, Africa, even before the pandemic, Africa has 6 of the 10 fastest growing economies in the world. You look even with the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, that is going to be a free trade area with 1.3 billion people and a collective GDP of $3.3 trillion that you have. And so when you look at what that means, you have the consumer and business expenditures in the continent, going to rise to $6.7 trillion by 2030. So that tells you that the fundamentals of Africa are as strong as they were. And so basically my mission into the US is to continue to is basically to encourage the U.S. private sector to invest massively in Africa, in particular in infrastructure and energy, particularly in terms of renewable energy and digital infrastructure. So basically, our role as African Development Bank is to tell the investment story of Africa. Second is to actually give the investors the confidence that they can invest, because we can help to source the deals, we can design bankable projects, we can do risk projects, and we can ensure that governments actually do the right thing in terms of the business, investment, and regulatory environment. So basically, I want to have a real recalibration of significant institutional investors investing in Africa, and that's why I'm here, and that's all my meetings have been really directed at this time.
Well, talking about the pandemic, Dr. Adesina, you have been very vocal around the issue of vaccine inequity, alongside fellow multilateral financial institution leaders like the IMF's Kristalina Georgieva. Why this stance?
And that's why we have to really, I've been quite vocal about access to vaccines. Take a look at it today in Africa. Only 24 million Africans have been vaccinated. And so you have a continent that is now being treated fairly in terms of access, in terms of the equity with regard to vaccinations. And that's because you have a situation wherein the developed countries bought up all the vaccines and advanced purchase agreements, locked it all up. And so the key really is making sure that Africa doesn't go through this again. So we want to make sure that we're dealing with this in three ways. One is to encourage global manufacturing companies of vaccines to relocate to Africa. And I think we're making some good headways there. But at the end of the day, vaccines aren't things you just pick off the shelf and you start running and selling, right? You need to build your own indigenous R&D capacity to do that. And at the African Development Bank, we are working right now to support Africa in this. We need to have an African healthcare defense system. Look at it as a defense system that requires greater investment in pharmaceuticals, greater investment in vaccine manufacturing in the continent, but also joining that with greater investment in quality healthcare infrastructure, primary healthcare, secondary, tertiary healthcare infrastructure, and diagnostic facilities. So those three things have to work in tandem to secure the health of Africa. Quite honestly, I don't think that Africa should outsource its health security to the benevolence of others.
One of the African Development Bank's annual flagship events, which has drawn significant investor interest from around the world in the last 3 years, is the bank's Forum Market Days. Its third edition runs from December 1 to 3 this year. Now, tell me a little bit more about it and your expectations for this year, especially.
Well, the Africa Investment Forum has become Africa's premier investment marketplace. And what makes it very unique is that we actually, there are no speeches in these meetings. It's all transactions, deals and deals and deals. What investors will tell you is, why will I want to invest in Africa? Because I actually don't know whether they are bankable projects. Well, we've shown that they are really very bankable projects. In 2018, when we had the Africa Investment Forum first premier edition, we were able to mobilize $38.7 billion of investment interest in Africa on bankable projects in less than 72 hours. Just think of that. And we did it again in 2019, and we were able to secure investment interest of $40.1 billion US dollars. And so that means that the investment opportunities are actually there. Of course, things got really affected by the COVID-19 situation. However, going back now to the Africa Investment Forum Market Days for 2021, the event will hold 1 to 3rd of December in Abidjan under a hybrid model. We will have some people in Abidjan that will link to others globally. We will run the investment boardroom sessions where we bring in the investors, the project developers, the insurance companies, the legal facilities, and the banks that can help to co-finance or syndicate or de-risk projects that are all going to be there, which heads the state. Everybody is eager to have investment rebound now in Africa.
That was Akinwumi Adesina, President of the African Development Bank, speaking with VOA's Peter Clotty. In part 2 of Peter's interview with Mr. Adesina, he will talk about the importance of renewable energy, climate resilience, and emerging technology. We're excited to hear what you think about Africa 54. Join the discussion on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our broadcast live on Facebook. Please watch and share our show with your friends. Also, check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Still to come, a Nigerian entrepreneur identifies another type of black gold. We'll tell you all about it. But first, here's Hedy Adams to tell us what's on tap for Wednesday's Straight Talk Africa.
Join me on the next Straight Talk Africa. My conversation with the U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, Linda Thomas-Greenfield, about the global fight against COVID-19 and what is at risk for African women as countries try to cope and recover from the pandemic. Join me, Hedy Adams, on the next Straight Talk Africa.
Health, wellness, sport, beauty, medical breakthroughs. Healthy Living cares about your well-being. What are the main health concerns in Africa and around the world? Find out the latest on coronavirus. Connect with our experts and ask them questions.
How long does the virus stay?
Join me, Linor Moudou, in Washington, every week on Healthy Living, right here on VOA.
Welcome back to Africa 54. Nigeria is a country heavily reliant on revenues from its oil exports, but entrepreneur Ifedolapo Runsewe has identified another type of black gold, used car tires. Soraya Ali reports.
Some dub it Nigeria's black gold. Hundreds of thousands of tires, which would otherwise be abandoned and dumped across the country, are now being reused. Ifedolapo Runsewe has created a company that collects, reworks and recycles old tires into things like paving bricks for playgrounds and other goods that can be used in Africa's most populous nation. The tires are reworked at an industrial plant owned by Freetown Waste Management Recycle. Runsewe is the company's managing director.
Creating something new from something that would otherwise be lying somewhere as waste, as was part of the motivation, like what can we be doing from this in terms of upcycling or recycling, which is why we started out with tires. And most people don't know that for your tires, the entire component of a tire is valuable in terms of the metal in the tire, the fiber in the tire.
The $5 million facility has recycled more than 100,000 tires into everything from speed bumps, floor tiles and soft paving. Waste management in Nigeria is patchy at best. Piles of waste are a common sight in villages, towns and cities, and residents often burn them at night for lack of a safer method of disposal. Tires in particular are routinely dumped and abandoned. Freetown relies on scavengers who collect old tires from dumping grounds. They're paid around 20 cents per tire.
Tires would ideally just lay waste. You would find them in drainages, you just find them in the corner, stockpiled, nothing to do with them. But now we are able to, create an entire value chain around the tires. The organizers know that if they get the tires across to us, they're going to get paid.
Freetown started operations with just 4 employees. It now has 128, having experienced rapid growth in the last year. And Runsewe has big aspirations for the future.
We do have a 5-year growth plan, which includes expansion and diversification into other types of waste, such as paper, PET bottles, electronic waste, amongst other things.
Soraya Ali of Reuters filed that report. As the U.S. national rate of COVID-19 infections declines, vaccine mandates for some jobs are pushing some employees to get the shots while others protest. VOA's Michelle Quinn has the story.
It's a moment that's long been coming in the United States,
With 76% of people in the country having had at least one vaccination, deadlines are approaching fast in workplaces, requiring employees to get the shot against COVID-19, the disease caused by the coronavirus, or risk losing their jobs. That has resulted in some pushback from employees. In Los Angeles, the sheriff said he will not enforce the county's vaccine mandate when it comes to his 18,000 employees.
There are entire groups of employees that are willing to be fired and laid off rather than get vaccinated. So I don't want to be in a position to lose 5–10% of my workforce overnight on a vaccine mandate.
These tensions come as the U.S. daily rate of COVID-19 infections has declined to about 95,000 new cases. That's a drop from a high during the most recent peak in September of 172,000 a day, according to the Johns Hopkins University, which is tracking the global outbreak. Dr. Anthony Fauci, the nation's top infectious disease expert, told CNN's State of the Union program he is optimistic about the pandemic's trajectory, but it's too soon to roll back pandemic restrictions such as masking.
I'd like to see it well below 10,000 and even much lower than that. But when you're at 95,000, that's still a situation where you have a high degree of dynamic circulation of virus in the community.
Health officials are expected to meet later this month to discuss Pfizer's application for emergency approval for children aged 5 to 11 to get its vaccine. Pfizer has proposed giving children 1/3 of the adult dosage. Former Food and Drug Administration head Scott Gottlieb, who sits on Pfizer's board, told CBS's Face the Nation that vaccine mandates for school children will likely be years off.
12 to 17 could be a couple of years away, perhaps a little longer. I think 5 to 11 is even longer than that. You're going to want to get more experience in those children.
Meanwhile, the Biden administration has pledged $1 billion to purchase millions of at-home rapid COVID-19 tests amid reports of test kit shortages around the country. By December, the White House says it will have a supply of 200 million kits per month. Michelle Quinn, VOA News.
And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, we thank you for watching.